Lyra stood in the palace gardens, her posture straight and her eyes focused. The early morning sunlight painted the marble floor with gold and pink, reflecting softly against the polished metal of her royal blade. She swung it slowly, deliberately, feeling the weight in her hand, the balance between skill and authority. Every movement was precise, every gesture practiced countless times. To the people of her world, the blade was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of leadership, of discipline, of centuries of tradition. And Lyra, as the young queen, carried that legacy with pride. The gardens were quiet. Birds with iridescent feathers flitted between crystal fountains, and soft melodies from the palace musicians drifted through the air. Lyra enjoyed these moments of solitude. They were her time to prepare herself, to perfect the ritual movements of the blade before any audience arrived. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the rhythm of the wind, the weight of her responsibility, and the sharp clarity that her blade demanded. Then, without warning, the sky trembled faintly above her. Lyra's eyes snapped open. A humming sound grew louder, deep and unfamiliar, resonating through the air like a heartbeat. She turned toward the source and saw a strange object descending from the sky, a sleek ship that shone like polished silver. It landed smoothly on the outskirts of the city, leaving a gentle plume of sparkling dust in its wake. Her advisors rushed forward, their faces pale with alarm. "Your Majesty," one of them said, bowing deeply, "an unknown vessel has entered our airspace. We do not recognize its markings. Should we alert the guard?" Lyra shook her head, her gaze fixed on the landing site. "No," she said calmly. "I will see this for myself." Her heels clicked softly on the marble as she moved toward the palace gates. The citizens of the city paused to watch, murmuring nervously. Aliens from various regions had come together to build this world, and outsiders were rare. Most visitors were diplomats or traders, well-known and formally invited. But this ship, its arrival had no announcement, no protocol, no warning. As she approached the landing site, the hatch of the ship hissed and opened. A figure stepped out. Lyra's first impression was of his small frame, his upright posture, and the way he seemed to observe everything at once, without fear. He wore a simple uniform, unlike any ceremonial dress she had ever seen. His hair was dark, slightly messy, and his eyes were bright, filled with curiosity rather than caution. He looked around, noticing the tall towers, the floating bridges, and the shimmering gardens, as if seeing them for the first time. Then he noticed Lyra. Their eyes met, and something shifted. She felt it immediately. This human was different. There was a lightness, a speed, a readiness in him that no ordinary visitor possessed. Lyra raised her royal blade, holding it in a defensive stance, not because she intended to attack, but because it was her duty to show readiness, to assert authority. "State your name and purpose," she said, her voice steady. "I am Ethan," the human said, his tone calm and even. "I come in peace. I wish only to learn." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Learning was a broad term, one that could hide anything from diplomacy to spying. Yet there was an honesty in his tone that she could not dismiss. Still, she could not risk being unprepared. Without thinking, she stepped forward and made a simple motion with the blade, a ceremonial signal that she wished to test him. Ethan moved, faster than she expected. He dodged her first careful strike with an instinctive sidestep, not as if he had trained for this, but as if his body simply knew what to do. Lyra froze for a fraction of a second, then adjusted, swinging again. He reacted again, light on his feet, matching her movements with surprising precision. Her advisors gasped. The human was faster than anything they had anticipated. Aliens were known for grace and training, but even the youngest warriors of the palace could not move with such immediate adaptability. Yet Ethan was not attacking. He was only responding, shifting, keeping pace with her, learning through motion. Lyra felt a mix of irritation and fascination. She had expected to demonstrate skill and command respect immediately. Instead, she was faced with a creature who could keep up with her instinctively, and yet, in his eyes, she saw no fear, no challenge, only curiosity. "Impressive," she admitted, lowering her blade slightly. "Few can follow my movements so quickly. How do you learn so fast?" Ethan shrugged. "I notice patterns. I adjust. I think quickly and act quickly. It is what humans do." Lyra blinked. "You call yourselves humans?" "Yes," he said simply, smiling faintly. "We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we surprise others." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Surprise was something she did not often encounter, especially not in her own palace. She had been trained since childhood, taught to anticipate and respond, to perfect every motion, every decision. Yet this human seemed almost natural in his ability to react. She lowered her blade fully now, curious. "You are not here to challenge me for power, then?" "No," Ethan replied. "I am here to observe, to understand, and to help if I can." Lyra studied him, noting his honesty, his confidence, his peculiar speed. She realized something she had not expected. This human could be more than a visitor. He could be an opportunity. She could learn from him, perhaps even see her own skills reflected in a new way. "You may stay," she said at last, "but you will follow my rules. The palace has its ways, and you will respect them." "I will," Ethan said without hesitation. Over the next several hours, Lyra guided Ethan through the palace. She showed him the gardens, the libraries, the training halls where her warriors practiced. Ethan watched everything with sharp eyes, asking questions about the history of the blade, the ceremonies of the court, and the structure of the city. He did not fumble with the alien language, speaking it with a surprising fluency. Lyra could not help but smile at some of his questions. "Why do you humans not train like we do?" he asked at one point, tilting his head. "Why do you spend so much time perfecting one skill instead of practicing many?" "Because mastery requires focus," Lyra replied. "One must dedicate a lifetime to skill, to tradition, to honor." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "We admire focus, but we also value flexibility. We believe that thinking and acting quickly can sometimes match long training." Lyra considered his words. She was trained to rely on precision and discipline. Humans, it seemed, relied on instinct and creativity. Both approaches had merit, but combining them? That was a thought that made her pulse quicken. As the sun began to set, casting the gardens in deep amber and purple, Lyra brought Ethan to the training hall. She picked up her royal blade again, demonstrating the final sequences she had perfected over years. Ethan mirrored the movements, not perfectly, but with enough skill to keep up. Her advisors watched silently, amazed. No human had ever moved with such quick understanding, such natural responsiveness. Even the queen herself felt a strange exhilaration at being tested in this way. Finally, Lyra lowered the blade and took a breath. "You are fast," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Faster than I expected." Ethan's smile was calm, unassuming. "I do not intend to compete," he said. "I only wish to learn, and to see what you have built here." Lyra studied him for a long moment. In that human, she saw something unusual, a spark of potential that her people rarely witnessed. Perhaps this was what her world needed. Not a replacement for tradition, but a new perspective, a different kind of speed that could complement their strength and wisdom. The evening sky darkened, and the palace lights glimmered. Lyra knew that this human would not simply leave after observing. His presence was going to challenge her ideas, her training, her beliefs, and she, in turn, would challenge him, test him, and perhaps learn more than she had ever imagined. The night closed around the palace, and Lyra and Ethan sat together under the largest fountain, watching the water shimmer. The queen felt something unfamiliar: anticipation, excitement, and a quiet hope. She realized that this human was not just faster in motion. He was faster in thought, quicker to adapt, and braver than many who had come before him. And in that moment, Lyra understood that the days ahead would not be easy, but they would be extraordinary. She had met a being who might change her world, not with force or violence, but with speed, intelligence, and the simple, unstoppable spirit of a human. The first part of their story was ending, but the journey, the real journey, was only beginning. The next morning, the palace was alive with quiet activity. Lyra moved through the halls, her royal blade sheathed at her side. The day was reserved for training and demonstration, but it was unlike any training she had conducted before. Today, Ethan would join her. She had decided it was time to test him, not as an enemy, but as a participant in a series of controlled challenges. Lyra's advisors watched from a distance, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. Aliens valued precision, control, and discipline. A human in their midst was unpredictable, and yet here he was, moving calmly, as if he belonged. "Ethan," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm, "today you will participate in our trial exercises. They are designed to test reflexes, coordination, and strategy. You must follow my instructions carefully." Ethan nodded. "I understand. I am ready." The first exercise was simple in appearance. Holographic projections appeared around the training hall, glowing shapes that moved in patterns across the floor. Lyra lifted her blade and began the sequence she had perfected over years. The projections responded to her motions, creating a dynamic environment. Each strike and movement of the blade triggered a change, requiring precision and attention. Ethan observed for a moment, his eyes scanning, calculating, learning. Then he moved. Smooth, fluid motions carried him around the projections. He stepped lightly, anticipating changes in patterns before they fully occurred. His speed and adaptability surprised Lyra. Even though he had no formal training in their techniques, he adjusted instantly, avoiding the projections and following her movements as if he had been practicing for years. The advisors whispered among themselves, He is keeping pace." Lyra frowned, intrigued. "He is fast," she murmured, "faster than I thought." The second exercise tested decision-making and memory. Colored orbs appeared, floating in mid-air, each representing a command. Lyra swung her blade, touching specific orbs in sequence. The correct sequence formed a pattern that revealed a hidden symbol. Any mistakes would reset the sequence. Ethan's eyes flicked from orb to orb. His hand moved quickly, choosing the correct sequence with instinctive precision. He paused once, considered, and adjusted a single step before continuing. Within moments, he completed the pattern, revealing the symbol. Lyra studied him, impressed. "You anticipate movements quickly," she said. "You are not just fast. You understand intention before it happens." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I notice patterns, then react. It is how humans approach challenges." Lyra considered this. Her people trained for decades to perfect such sequences, yet Ethan had managed it almost instinctively. She realized that speed and intuition could sometimes rival years of disciplined training. The thought fascinated her. The third exercise was more complex. It combined agility, memory, and collaboration. Multiple projections moved at once, creating a maze of shifting obstacles. Lyra's role was to lead, guiding Ethan through the maze by calling out directions and signals. At first, Ethan struggled slightly, hesitating when two projections moved in opposite directions. But he quickly adapted. He shifted his body fluidly, following instructions while adding his own adjustments. Lyra noticed how his movements seemed natural, yet precise. There was creativity in his responses, something her own training emphasized less. Her pride flared. She wanted to demonstrate superiority, to prove that years of disciplined practice could not be matched by instinct alone. But as the exercise continued, she had to admit it. Ethan's responses were elegant, efficient, and remarkably quick. By the end of the session, Lyra lowered her blade, breathing lightly. "You have done well," she said. "You are fast, adaptable, and attentive. Few could keep up with my movements as you have." Ethan smiled. "Thank you. I learn quickly, but I am still learning from you." The alien advisors exchanged glances. They had never witnessed a human perform so well in their exercises. Some were skeptical, believing that a human's speed could not match the precision of a trained alien warrior. Yet here, in the palace hall, the evidence was undeniable. Lyra decided to introduce a new challenge, one that would require both thought and movement. She summoned a series of floating spheres, each with a different color and symbol. The exercise was a test of pattern recognition. Each sphere required a specific motion from the blade to deactivate it. The spheres moved unpredictably, changing position and speed randomly. Ethan watched carefully. "I think I understand the pattern," he said, stepping forward. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You think?" Ethan grinned. "I act, then adjust." He moved quickly. Each step was precise, each motion deliberate. He intercepted the spheres, mimicking some of Lyra's movements but adding his own adjustments. When a sphere changed direction suddenly, he corrected instantly. Within minutes, all the spheres were deactivated. Lyra's eyes widened. "Remarkable. You read the situation as it happens and adjust immediately. That is not how most would approach this exercise." Ethan shrugged again. "I have learned that being fast is not just about moving quickly. It is about observing, predicting, and responding. It is about thinking and acting together." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. This human was teaching her a lesson she had not expected. She had trained for speed and precision, yet Ethan showed her that thinking quickly and reacting naturally could achieve results she had never imagined. After the exercises, Lyra led Ethan to the palace gardens. The sunlight was soft and warm, and the fountain in the center reflected the morning sky. They sat together on a marble bench, overlooking the flowing water. "You are different from any other visitor we have had," Lyra said. "Your movements, your reactions, they are unusual for your species. How have you developed these skills?" Ethan considered this. "We humans train in many ways, but often informally. We observe, we experiment, we adapt. We learn from our environment and from each other. Discipline is valuable, but so is flexibility. We use both." Lyra studied him. "You are right," she said. "I see that now. My people value mastery through repetition and focus. You achieve mastery through observation, adaptation, and instinct." Ethan smiled faintly. "Different approaches, but perhaps similar goals." Lyra felt a strange excitement. She had trained her entire life to be the fastest and most precise with her blade. She had expected to teach, to demonstrate, to impress. Instead, she found herself learning from a human. Over the next few hours, they continued various exercises, testing reflexes, observation, and coordination. Lyra introduced Ethan to the city's ancient training methods, showing him patterns and routines that had been practiced for centuries. Ethan adapted quickly, adding his own natural movements, making the sequences smoother and faster. By mid-afternoon, the palace council summoned Lyra. They wanted to observe Ethan's abilities for themselves. Lyra led him into the council chamber where elders and advisors waited, sitting in a semicircle. "You claim to be fast," one elder said, his voice cautious. "Let us see if this human can meet the standards of our tradition." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Observe," she said, nodding toward Ethan. The Council created a holographic simulation, a series of moving targets and obstacles designed to test reflexes, timing, and strategy. Lyra demonstrated first, moving through the simulation with grace, precision, and control. The Council nodded approvingly. Then Ethan stepped forward. At first he hesitated slightly, scanning the simulation. Then he moved. His steps were quick and light, his hands precise. He adjusted instantly as targets shifted, finding paths that Lyra had not anticipated. The Council watched in awe. A human, untrained in their traditions, had matched their queen in speed and accuracy. One elder whispered, "This is impossible." Lyra shook her head, smiling quietly. "It is not impossible," she said. "It is human." The council members looked puzzled, but they could not deny the evidence before them. Ethan had proven that speed, observation, and quick thinking could rival decades of disciplined training. Some were skeptical, but many were intrigued. After the session, Lyra and Ethan returned to the gardens. Lyra placed her hand on the fountain, letting the water trickle through her fingers. She looked at Ethan. "You have shown me something remarkable," she said. "Not just speed, but clarity, intuition, and adaptability. I underestimated humans. I assumed your strength was limited, but you are capable in ways we rarely see." Ethan smiled. "I learn quickly, yes, but I also admire your people, your skill, your precision, your focus. It is extraordinary. We humans do not often match such discipline, but we can learn from it." Lyra nodded. "Perhaps we can learn from each other." Ethan looked out at the horizon, the city glowing under the afternoon sun. "That is my hope," he said. For the first time, Lyra considered the possibilities. A human in their city, moving faster, thinking faster, reacting faster, but not with aggression, not with violence, only with curiosity and adaptability. Perhaps this was what her people needed: a new perspective, a new way to see the world, a reminder that speed and cleverness could complement tradition. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the gardens, Lyra felt a sense of excitement she had not felt in years. The human was not a threat nor a rival, but a catalyst. Together they could explore new ideas, solve problems in new ways, and perhaps discover potential neither had realized existed. And so the first day of real understanding came to a close. Not with a battle, not with conflict, but with observation, respect, and the quiet thrill of discovering that sometimes being faster was more than moving quickly. It was thinking, adjusting, and seeing the world in ways others could not. Lyra looked at Ethan and thought, "This human is faster in every way that truly matters." The morning air was crisp and filled with a gentle hum from the city's energy grid. Lyra moved swiftly through the palace corridors, her blade sheathed but her mind alert. Today she was not training alone. Ethan would accompany her to a part of the city rarely shown to visitors, the core chamber, where the city's energy network was monitored and maintained. As they walked, Lyra explained the importance of the core. "Our city is built on precision," she said. "The core powers every structure, every system. It is delicate. If it fails, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for the city, but for the people who live here." Ethan nodded, listening intently. "I understand. The core is like the heart of the city, then?" "Exactly," Lyra replied. "Every pulse must be calculated, every flow controlled. We have relied on this system for centuries." They reached the chamber, a massive hall of transparent tubes, floating control panels, and shimmering conduits of energy. Technicians, all aliens, were moving in precise, synchronized motions, monitoring readings and adjusting flows with meticulous care. It was a dance of efficiency, each movement rehearsed, deliberate, and unerring. Lyra gestured for Ethan to observe. "This is where precision matters most," she said. "Even the slightest mistake could cause an imbalance. That is why only trained personnel work here." Ethan watched closely. His eyes followed the streams of energy as if he could read the flow itself. "It is beautiful," he said, "like a river frozen in motion." Lyra smiled faintly. "Beautiful, yes, but fragile. That is why training is critical." For a few hours, Ethan observed, asking questions and noting small patterns in how the technicians responded to fluctuations. He did not interfere, only watched and learned. Lyra was impressed. While humans lacked formal training in alien systems, Ethan's curiosity and quick mind allowed him to notice patterns almost instinctively. Suddenly, alarms sounded. Red lights flashed across the chamber, and the hum of the energy grid shifted to a strained vibration. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "Something is happening," she said. "The core is destabilizing." Technicians scrambled to their stations, their movements precise but hurried. Energy readings spiked and dipped unpredictably. Lyra realized immediately that the usual methods, the standard procedures, might be too slow to stabilize the anomaly. She turned to Ethan. "I need your help. Your speed, your ability to adapt, might make a difference." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "I will do what I can." Lyra quickly explained the situation. Certain conduits were overheating, and the technicians could not adjust them quickly enough without risking further imbalance. She instructed Ethan to move between panels and conduits, applying his quick observation and intuition to anticipate the next fluctuation. Ethan stepped forward, moving with agility and focus. He touched one panel, observed the readings, and adjusted a small flow. Instantly, the system responded. A conduit pulsed with a soft glow instead of the harsh red spike. Ethan moved again, quickly analyzing and correcting multiple points simultaneously. Lyra led the technicians, using her blade symbolically to direct movement patterns and sequence adjustments. She was not striking or threatening, but signaling, guiding, and coordinating the team. Her years of training allowed her to make decisions calmly, even under pressure. Ethan's movements complemented hers perfectly. Where Lyra relied on calculated sequences, Ethan relied on instinctive observation. When a conduit shifted unexpectedly, Ethan reacted before anyone else could, stabilizing it immediately. Together, they created a rhythm that neither could have achieved alone. The chamber was alive with energy, lights flickering and hums rising in intensity. Technicians worked with renewed precision, guided by Lyra and assisted by Ethan. The city's heartbeat seemed to synchronize with their movements, the core responding to their combined efforts. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Lyra and Ethan continued their coordinated actions, neither tiring, both completely immersed in the task. The anomaly was unpredictable, but Ethan's quick thinking allowed them to anticipate shifts before they happened, while Lyra's disciplined guidance ensured that every adjustment was safe and deliberate. Finally, the alarms subsided. The core's energy stabilized, flowing smoothly through every conduit. Technicians sighed in relief, their movements slowing as the tension in the chamber eased. Lyra lowered her blade and exhaled deeply, a rare smile touching her lips. Ethan stood nearby, sweat on his brow, but his eyes bright with focus and satisfaction. "It is stable," he said softly. "For now." Lyra approached him, placing her hand briefly on his shoulder. "You were remarkable," she said. "Your speed and intuition saved the city. I had underestimated what humans are capable of." Ethan smiled. "And I had underestimated the beauty of your precision. Your guidance made my speed useful. Alone, I could not have done it." The technicians began to applaud, not just for the successful stabilization, but for the unlikely partnership that had achieved it. Lyra noticed how the room, once tense with alarm, now felt alive with respect and admiration. One elder stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your collaboration has shown us something new. Perhaps humans can contribute to our traditions, not by replacing them, but by enhancing them." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and perhaps our traditions can teach humans discipline, focus, and respect for precision. We can learn from each other." Ethan's eyes brightened. "That is all I could hope for: understanding, collaboration, and growth." As the sun set outside, casting golden light across the chamber, Lyra reflected on the events of the day. She had faced many challenges in her life: political disputes, personal trials, and physical tests of skill, but nothing had prepared her for this. A human, moving with instinctive speed and cleverness, had taught her that there were new ways to achieve excellence. Later, in the palace gardens, Lyra and Ethan walked together along the marble paths. The fountains reflected the fading light, and the air was cool and comforting. "You were incredible today," Lyra said, her voice quiet but sincere. "Your speed, your observation. It was like watching water flow through stone, smooth, effortless, but powerful." Ethan chuckled softly. "I only did what I thought would help. I learned quickly, yes, but I could not have done it without your guidance." Lyra paused, looking at him. "Perhaps that is the lesson here. Strength alone is not enough. Speed alone is not enough. It is the combination of insight, adaptability, and guidance that allows true success." Ethan nodded. "I agree. And it is a rare thing to find someone who can guide while letting you act freely. You allowed me to move, to think, to adjust. That is what made it work." Lyra smiled faintly. "I think we both learned something today." They continued walking, and the city began to light up with the soft glow of evening lamps. Citizens paused to watch their queen, and some caught sight of Ethan walking beside her. Whispers spread quickly. Humans had always been curious outsiders, but this one had proven something extraordinary. They could be fast, clever, and invaluable in ways no one had imagined. That night, Lyra stood alone on the palace balcony, looking at the stars. She thought of the human who had changed her perspective, who had taught her that speed was more than motion. It was thought, reaction, and understanding. Her hand rested on the hilt of her royal blade. She had reached for it countless times in her life, practicing, training, and preparing. And yet, she realized something important. Even her blade, symbol of centuries of mastery, could not alone define greatness. It was how it was used, combined with intelligence and insight, that truly mattered. Ethan's presence had shown her that humans were remarkable not for their strength alone, but for their spirit, their cleverness, and their ability to adapt quickly to any challenge. Lyra smiled quietly to herself, thinking of the days ahead. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new exercises, new tests, and new challenges. But she was no longer alone in facing them. With Ethan by her side, she felt a renewed sense of excitement and possibility. Together, they could explore new ideas, solve problems in ways her people had never imagined, and perhaps even reshape how her city approached both tradition and innovation. The night air was cool, and the palace was quiet. Lyra looked to the horizon, where the stars reflected the light of her city. A human had shown her that being faster was not just about movement. It was about thought, insight, and courage. And in that quiet moment, she knew that the story of this human and this alien queen was only just beginning. The next morning, the city was quiet, the calm before a day that promised activity. Lyra walked with purpose through the palace corridors. Today, she had summoned Ethan to the central observation tower, a place rarely accessed by visitors. The tower overlooked the city, and from its peak, one could see the energy flows that powered every district, every street, and every building. Lyra gestured toward the glowing networks of energy. "This is where we monitor our city's stability," she explained. "The core distributes power, but it can fluctuate. Even small deviations can ripple through the city." Ethan studied the patterns, his eyes moving quickly. I see. These flows, they are alive in a way, aren't they? Alive, yes, but delicate, Lyra replied. We have trained our entire lives to maintain balance, but sometimes tradition alone is not enough. Change comes slowly, but change can be necessary. No sooner had she spoken than alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the tower as energy readings spiked unexpectedly. Lyra's heart tightened. The core was destabilizing again, but this time the problem was not minor. A sudden natural anomaly, rare but powerful, threatened to disrupt the flow entirely. Technicians rushed to their stations, following procedure. Their movements were precise, rehearsed, and disciplined. But the anomaly moved too quickly, changing patterns faster than the usual protocols could handle. Lyra realized that conventional methods alone could not prevent damage. She turned to Ethan. Your adaptability, your quick thinking, you may be the key to stabilizing this. Ethan's expression was calm. I will do my best. Together they moved through the observation tower. Lyra's role was to coordinate, signaling technicians and guiding adjustments with a combination of gestures and commands. Ethan, meanwhile, moved quickly between consoles, anticipating shifts, adjusting flows, and correcting imbalances before they could grow. Lyra watched him, amazed. His speed and intuition were unmatched. While her people relied on careful sequencing, Ethan read the system instinctively. When a conduit threatened to overheat, he diverted energy almost instantly, and when a control panel glitched, he solved the issue with a combination of quick logic and spatial awareness. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. The city's energy network pulsed and glowed, responding to their coordinated actions. Technicians followed Lyra's guidance while Ethan's rapid corrections kept the core balanced. The teamwork was seamless, discipline meeting instinct, precision meeting adaptability. Finally, the alarms ceased. The readings returned to normal and the red lights faded. The technicians exhaled with relief, their movements slowing as the tension left the room. Lyra lowered her blade, symbolically sheathing it in acknowledgement of the work completed. Ethan stood nearby, sweat on his brow but eyes bright. The core is stable, he said. For now. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. You were extraordinary. Without your speed and insight, the results might have been different. I have underestimated humans. Ethan smiled. And I underestimated the value of your precision. Your guidance made my speed effective. Alone, I could not have achieved this. The Palace Council entered, having observed remotely through monitors. One elder stepped forward, bowing. Your collaboration has proven something remarkable. Humans possess speed and ingenuity that, when guided by discipline, can achieve outcomes we could not alone. Lyra nodded. Yes, and our traditions can teach humans patience, focus, and the value of careful planning. We have much to learn from each other. The council members murmured among themselves, some skeptical, some fascinated. The idea of combining human intuition with alien precision was new, revolutionary even, but undeniable in practice. As the sun began to set, Lyra and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens. The fountains reflected the fading light, and the air was filled with the soft murmur of flowing water. Citizens paused to watch the queen with the human by her side. Their presence together sent a message. Cooperation and respect, not conflict, were the true marks of greatness. You were incredible today, Lyra said quietly. Your speed, your intuition, it changed the outcome entirely. Ethan shook his head. I only reacted to what I saw. You taught me structure and strategy. We worked together, and that made it successful. Lyra considered this. Perhaps that is the lesson of our encounter. Strength or speed alone is not enough. It is their combination with insight, understanding, and collaboration that leads to true success. Ethan's eyes sparkled. I have learned a lot from you. Discipline and planning, they are as important as speed. Lyra smiled, thinking of the many exercises they had shared, the hours spent learning, observing, and cooperating. And we have learned from you. Humans are fast in thought and action, capable of responding in ways that challenge our assumptions. You have shown us potential we did not expect. They walked to the edge of the gardens, overlooking the city lights shimmering in the evening. Lyra rested her hand on the fountain, letting the water flow over her fingers. I realize now, she said softly, that speed is not just motion. It is observation, insight, courage, and adaptability. And humans embody all of these? Ethan looked at her with quiet admiration. And you, Lyra, have shown me that focus, precision, and discipline can amplify these abilities. We make each other better. The palace chimed in the distance, signaling the coming of night. Citizens returned to their homes, but the story of the human and the queen would spread quickly. For the first time, many recognized that humans were not simply visitors. They were allies, innovators, and capable of remarkable contributions to the world. Lyra looked at Ethan and placed her hand briefly on her royal blade. It was a symbol of leadership, yes, but also a reminder of responsibility and respect. She had reached for it countless times in her life, yet today she realized something profound. Even her blade, a symbol of mastery, was strengthened when combined with insight, creativity, and cooperation. Ethan smiled. I have never been taught this way, he said. Usually, speed is valued for individual achievement. Here, it is used to help others, guided by wisdom. Lyra nodded. That is the difference. True greatness is not only in how fast one can move, but in how one chooses to use that ability. The night sky stretched above them, stars reflecting the glow of the city below. Lyra felt a sense of peace and anticipation. With this human at her side, new possibilities awaited. Together they could explore solutions to challenges she had once thought insurmountable, inspire their people, and show that collaboration between different worlds could create extraordinary results. Tomorrow, they would continue their exercises, push boundaries, and perhaps discover even more ways humans and aliens could complement each other. But tonight, Lyra allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. She looked at Ethan and thought, this human is faster, not just in movement, but in thought and spirit. He shows us what is possible when curiosity, courage, and intelligence meet opportunity. Ethan looked out at the city, his expression thoughtful. I have never felt so welcomed nor so challenged. This world, it is extraordinary, and you, Lyra, are extraordinary as well. Lyra smiled faintly. And together, we can make it even better. They stood there for a long moment, watching the lights of the city pulse gently with energy. In that quiet, reflective time, Lyra understood the truth she had been slowly discovering over days of training, observation, and cooperation. Humans were remarkable, not because of raw power, but because of speed, insight, and the willingness to rise to challenges with ingenuity and courage. Ethan had arrived as a visitor, an outsider, yet he had become a partner, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. Lyra realized that this encounter would not be a fleeting story. It would shape the future of their city, their people, and perhaps even the way humans and aliens viewed each other across the stars. She placed her hand again on the hilt of her blade, a silent acknowledgement of the lessons learned and the bond forged. The human had proven himself, yes, but more importantly, he had shown what collaboration could achieve. The night deepened, and the city glimmered beneath them, alive and full of promise. Lyra and Ethan turned to leave, walking side by side. a queen and a human, partners in discovery and guardians of potential. And as they moved, Lyra felt the spark of excitement and hope. The journey was far from over. Together, they would explore new horizons, solve new challenges, and continue proving that humanity's ingenuity, speed, and spirit could illuminate even the most precise and disciplined worlds. The story of a queen, her royal blade, and the human who was faster had reached a turning point. The world had witnessed what was possible when courage met wisdom, speed met discipline, and two beings from different worlds chose to learn from each other. And in that moment, Lyra knew, without doubt, that humanity's true power was not only in their speed or cleverness, it was in their ability to inspire, to adapt, and to elevate everyone around them.